Hey, how you floating this boat? Welcome back to rendition number 12 of the 1-2. So, on the 25th of March, we already know that the Mexican monster David Benavidez and Caleb Sweet Hands Plant are going to be throwing down in an absolutely magnificent middleweight bout. But who exactly is going to be up on the undercard? Well, my friends, can't wait to tell you. Chris Primetime Colbert, as well as Jose El Rayo Valenzuela, will be facing off in an all-or-nothing type of bout to more or less just really see whose name is going to be kept alive in the lightweight division. If you don't know, these two individuals have been coming off of not only their first career losses, and to say that they both have something to prove is, well, let's say an egregious understatement at this point. You see, both Chris and Jose fight within the lightweight division, and I've said lots of things about all the divisions, from how the middleweights are the most competitive, and how heavyweights you see the best KOs, and how, if anything, whenever it comes to the lightweights, they are literally the most stacked division in the entirety of boxing. Nobody else in no other division can genuinely come down and say anything different. It's just so fucking stacked. There are so many great, awesome world champions that could be made there, and honestly just need to fight one another to kind of see who just genuinely is the best. And god damn it, these two are nowhere near the best. They're kind of cruising in the middle in my opinion. But with all due respect, just to really get this out of the way, who exactly do I think is going to be winning? Easy, it's El Rayo. More explosive power, overall just, let's say, a little bit more better in every single aspect, except for IQ, really. And even though he may be, let's say, I don't know, a tad bit harder to more or less gauge, I do think that El Rayo at the end of the day, because he doesn't have anything specific going for him, El Rayo is kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none, while we kind of know exactly what Chris Colbert's actually going to be able to do. And the difference is that sure, hand speed and combinations is nice, but you're going to need a whole lot more than that to actually fuck around and contest with El Rayo. Even though those are some of your biggest strengths, even though I do highly advise that you go ahead and play to them, Chris, you are going to need to be on your fucking top. You're going to need to be on your shit the entirety of the time. You're going to need to make sure that if anything, you cannot fuck around and let El Rayo get the pace of the fight. Do not let him set pace. You have to constantly be on him. Make sure your fucking punch output, your work output, everything is just 10 times more than what he's actually able to give. Because for whatever it is, dude, you have absolutely no dog at all. Rayo has dog. Rayo has the ability to fuck around and get hurt and still be in the fight. You, on the other hand, are the complete fucking opposite. So whenever it really does come down to it, El Rayo, in my opinion, has honestly a lot of fucking advantages against you. But for whatever it is, he doesn't have every single one. I still think you have slightly higher IQ, but then on top of that, we also have to sit here and determine things like, okay, well, if El Rayo isn't good with combinations, if his hand speed isn't really just as fucking good, is that all Chris Colbert's going to really need to do? Yes, that, and then also maintain his distance. He doesn't really know exactly how to, let's say, I don't know, stay within his range. It's really hard for him to kind of find that because people like to really run around and run away from him, and sometimes Chris can end up reaching with his combinations whenever he really doesn't fucking need to. Starting off with the fact that Chris is obviously the one fighter that has, let's say, the shorter reach, and I'm pretty sure he's also shorter as well. It's one of these cases where not only are you dealing with someone who is now, let's say, bigger and has more reach than you, but they're also younger than you. So it does really mean that he could have a few more, let's say, points in terms of explosivity and power and all this other shit that you have, let's say, grown accustomed to in your grown-ass body already, Chris. And I can't really act as if that you really won't be able to keep him on edge and you won't be able to keep him on bay all day. I think the big problem with you is that you cannot get put on the ropes. Do not try to sit here and try to invite anyone to do anything or try to fuck around in combination. Like, don't do that. I think Chris's big problem always comes down to how comfortable he is in his fights. And this is going to be one of those few ones where he has to be able to understand that, A, not only do you need to stifle the offense by continuing to pursue and put your offense on the El Rayo, but as well, you need to be boxing. You do not need to try and fight El Rayo. He has more dog than you. This is one of those few fucking times where, Chris, you got to be a boxer, and you've got to do it well. Your combinations, your hand speed, and honestly, the way how deceptive your power can be sometimes too, especially the way in which sometimes he ends his combinations. Hell yeah, he can give El Rayo some trouble because El Rayo is not good on the fucking ropes, none whatsoever. And I think this is going to be the one time where Chris needs to try his damnedest to get someone into the fucking corner and try his damnedest to get them there and keep them there, because El Rayo cannot fight off his back well at all. And if he is, let's say, running the entire time, just trying to make sure that he is off the ropes the entire time, while you are more or less, let's say, easily able to catch him and, you know, throw in your combinations and stay within your decent range as well, it's great. I think El Rayo's biggest problem is also one of your biggest problems as well whenever it comes to his offense, is that you both reach. You both have a tendency to like put the entirety of your body behind some of your heaviest punches, and that of course leaves you off balance, but also so fucking open to the classic make him miss and make him pay counter. So for Chris, he should really just keep the combinations flowing, make sure that speed is at the absolute top fucking notch that it can be, and he needs to utilize the ring as well. Continue to create and fight at your own pace and at your own space, Chris. Do not at any circumstance fuck around and give it up to El Rayo. All you have right now is the pace and to keep it for your fucking self. Make sure that if anything, your output, punch output, work, everything like that, it needs to be 10 times more than what El Rayo is doing. And by God, does he more or less just have an easier time in this fight. You see, not only does El Rayo just have natural KO power, but he is not dominant in any type of hand. Both of them motherfuckers are dangerous. And he has been able to put down people with, well, all types of punches, from uppercuts to hooks to straight rights. It's just not necessarily easy to sit here and say that there's one thing that El Rayo genuinely doesn't have that Chris needs to really be watching out for. Everything is fucking dangerous coming from him. And he's a younger prospect with even less wins. I hate to sit here and say it, but like them putting him up against you, Chris, in his eyes, this is a big fucking insult. He's got a lot of shit to prove here. And I don't want to sit here and act as if that he has absolutely, let's say, the easiest time dealing with this. No, I do still sit here and think that even though El Rayo may not necessarily, let's say, understand how fast he can be sometimes, he is able to truly, let's say, be okay, and he's very, let's say, controlled with his power as well. It's not something where you can kind of tell with Chris that there will be just some points of times and some combinations where he's really trying to put the hurt on you, he's really trying to soften you up, because, well, the next isn't going to be a long 5, 6, 7 punch combination. It's going to be a clear like 1-2-1, or it's going to be a 2-3-2, like something like that. It's going to be something that's going to put your ass down or really, really, really rock you. And at the end of the day, even if that may be, let's say, easy to see from the outside looking in, or even if you're, you know, within the match with him at that point in time, it's going to be up to El Rayo to make sure that he utilizes not only his speed, which is very, very fast. He's more explosive than anything else, I would say that. While Chris just has natural hand speed, El Rayo is explosive, and he really needs to learn how to use that explosivity at the right times. He needs to also work on his counterpunching, because whenever it comes to him being on the ropes and defending himself, especially whenever he's hurt, he may be able to do it well or better than Chris, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually, let's say, quote-unquote effective. Just because it doesn't necessarily get you, like, I don't know, well, I hate to sit here and say it, but anytime in which he shells up, he doesn't actually, let's say, catch punches and keep his head up. He shells up and puts his head down. So he's really open to, let's say, I don't know, hooks from either side of the fucking high guard, or he's just more susceptible to an uppercut, which I hate to sit here and say it, but that motherfucker Chris Colbert has a deceptively powerful and fast uppercut. It's one of the very few things that will catch you whenever you think you're gonna try to, you know, dodge and weave during his fucking combinations. Homeboy is very, very sharp as well in his punches. So this is a fight that not only does El Rayo have to take seemingly serious, but he also has to fully understand that if he allows for Chris to play the way in which he wants to the entire time, he's going to fucking easily win, because Chris is already a fairly swift and fast and agile fucking kind of individual. His footwork is pretty goddamn amazing as well. He could really, really set your ass up for something that you don't even really even see. And I do think that El Rayo, even though he does have more explosive power and he is essentially just overall a more defensively sound individual, there are big things that I can really say that Chris has that can guarantee him the fight, but there are some things that I can't sit here and automatically say guarantees El Rayo the win. He has more things to look forward to. He has more in his arsenal because he's, in my opinion, more explosive. He's obviously more and more powerful, and if anything, his IQ is probably on the same level as Chris Colbert's as well. So those two would really be able to bounce off one another pretty damn good, but also it's just one of those cases where, let's say if IQ does start to get thrown out the window for El Rayo, he can just kind of rely on his dog, which is something that we all know Chris Colbert heavily lacks. So for El Rayo, he really does need to make sure that he focuses on a few things. Not only does he need to make sure to keep his distance because he has the better reach, and on top of that, he needs to, I hate to sit here and say it, but he needs to really punch with Chris Colbert. Even though it could get him into trouble, fighting with Chris Colbert is honestly one of the biggest things that he's probably not the most prepared for. Especially after being, let's say, knocked down by Hector Garcia and everything, and just that complete fucking loss. I can definitely tell he's going to be a lot more wary with continuing the combinations and being really deep into the paint, because that type of knockout really does put some type of PTSD into you. And in all due respect, I think both of these guys are going to be so fucking ready for one another, but we will really just have to see. My money and all my cards are still on El Rayo, but still look out for Chris Colbert. That motherfucker could upset.